The room was silent. Everyone in the room froze as a young man stepped forward and held out his hand. "Trust me and stand up," he said, his voice steady and unshaken. For 23 years, Sarah Martinez had never stood born. With spina bifida, she had never taken a single step, but now, she was staring at a stranger's hand, wondering if she dared to take it. "What if I told you that a single touch could change everything? What if I told you that one moment could rewrite 23 years of impossibility? What if I told you that love could literally make the impossible possible?" You are about to witness something that will shake everything you believe about human potential, about miracles, about the power of one person to transform another person's entire existence. Sarah Martinez had never taken a single step in her life. Born with spina bifida, she had been confined to a wheelchair since birth. 23 years of watching the world from a seated position. 23 years of dreams about walking that seemed as distant as touching the stars. 23 years of physical therapy appointments that ended in disappointment. 23 years of well-meaning people telling her that acceptance was the key to happiness. But Sarah refused to accept. She refused to believe that her story was already written. She refused to let her condition define the boundaries of her dreams. Every single day she would imagine what it would feel like to stand tall, to feel her feet on the ground, to walk across a room under her own power. She would close her eyes and visualize herself dancing, running, climbing mountains, even though doctors had told her parents from day one that walking would never be possible. Then David Chen walked into her life and everything changed forever. David wasn't a doctor, he wasn't a miracle worker, he wasn't even someone with any medical background. He was just a 25-year-old physical therapy student who had been assigned to work with Sarah as part of his clinical rotation at the rehabilitation center where she received treatment. Most students would look at Sarah's file, see the diagnosis, see the prognosis, and approach the case with realistic expectations. But David saw something different. When he looked at Sarah, he didn't see limitations, he saw potential. When other people saw a wheelchair, he saw a person who was ready to defy every single prediction that had ever been made about her future. When other people saw impossible, he saw an opportunity to rewrite medical history. Their first session together was unlike anything Sarah had ever experienced. David didn't start with the usual routine of stretching exercises and strength-building activities. Instead, he did something that shocked everyone in that room. He stood up from his chair, walked over to Sarah, extended his hand, and said 5 words that would change everything. "Trust me and stand up." The room fell silent. Sarah's regular therapist started to protest, explaining that Sarah had no motor function in her legs, explaining that this could be dangerous, explaining that David clearly didn't understand the severity of her condition. But David never took his eyes off Sarah. He kept his hand extended, waiting patiently with a confidence that seemed to radiate from somewhere deep inside him. Sarah stared at his outstretched hand. For 23 years she had been told what she couldn't do. For 23 years she had been surrounded by people who loved her but who had also accepted that walking was simply not in her future. For 23 years she had been waiting for someone to believe in the impossible. The way she believed in it, in that moment, something extraordinary happened. Sarah felt something she had never felt before. A tingling sensation started in her spine and spread down through her legs. It was subtle at first, so subtle that she almost dismissed it as her imagination, but then the sensation grew stronger, and she realized that for the first time in her entire life she could actually feel her legs. With tears streaming down her face, Sarah reached out and took David's hand. What happened next defied every medical explanation, every textbook, every case study that had ever been written about spina bifida. With David supporting her weight, Sarah began to push herself up from her wheelchair. Inch by inch, she rose higher than she had ever been under her own power. Her legs, which had been motionless for 23 years, began to tremble with effort, and then something incredible happened. They began to support her weight. The room erupted in gasps and crying as Sarah Martinez stood upright for the first time in her life. But that wasn't the end of the miracle. It was only the beginning, because as David continued to hold her hand, Sarah took her first step, then her second, then her third. Within 30 minutes, Sarah was walking across the room. The medical staff couldn't explain it. The doctors who had treated Sarah since childhood were called in to witness what they declared was medically impossible. Her neurologist ran test after test, trying to understand how someone with Sarah's condition could suddenly develop motor function that had never existed. The results showed that somehow, some way, Sarah's nervous system had found new pathways, new connections that bypassed the damaged areas of her spine. But the real miracle wasn't just in the medical mystery, it was in the transformation that occurred in Sarah herself. Years of being told she was disabled had created mental barriers that were just as limiting as her physical condition. But when David held out his hand and asked her to trust him, he wasn't just offering physical support, he was offering her permission to believe in herself the way he believed in her over the following weeks. Sarah progressed from walking a few steps to walking across entire rooms, to walking upstairs, to eventually running the rehabilitation center, where this miracle occurred, became the site of international media attention. Medical experts flew in from around the world to study what they called the most remarkable case of neurological recovery in modern medical history. But Sarah and David knew the truth. This wasn't just about neurological recovery. This was about the power of human connection. This was about what happens when someone refuses to accept limitations. This was about the incredible things that become possible when one person truly believes in another person's potential. The story spread across social media and news outlets around the world. Videos of Sarah taking her first steps were viewed millions of times. People shared their own stories of overcoming impossible odds. Parents of children with disabilities reached out to say that Sarah's story had given them hope they had never dared to feel. Medical professionals began to reconsider their approach to treating patients with similar conditions. Sarah and David developed a training program for healthcare workers focused on the importance of belief and emotional support in physical recovery. They established a foundation that provides resources for families dealing with mobility challenges. They wrote a book together about their experience that became a bestseller and inspired countless readers to reconsider their own perceived limitations. But perhaps the most beautiful part of this story is what happened between Sarah and David as they worked together, helping Sarah master her newfound the ability to walk. They discovered that their connection went far beyond patient and therapist. The man who had helped Sarah find her legs had also found his way into her heart. 2 years after that first miraculous day, Sarah walked down the aisle. At her wedding to David, she wore a flowing white dress and walked every single step without assistance. The same hands that had first helped her stand were now holding hers as they exchanged vows. The same man who had believed in her impossible dream was now promising to spend his life making new dreams come true together. Their wedding video shows Sarah dancing with her father for the first time, something both of them had dreamed about but never believed would happen. It shows her walking confidently in high heels, something she had imagined since she was a little girl watching other women. It shows her climbing stairs to the altar under her own power, each step a testament to the power of refusing to accept impossible. Today, Sarah works as a motivational speaker, traveling around the country, sharing her story with audiences who are facing their own impossible situations. She tells them about the moment when David held out his hand. She tells them about the choice she made to trust someone who believed in her more than she believed in herself. She tells them that miracles don't always come in the form we expect, but they do come to those who are brave enough to reach out and take the hand that's being offered. David completed his physical therapy degree and now runs a clinic that specializes in working with patients who have been told that recovery is impossible. His approach combines traditional therapy techniques with what he calls belief-based rehabilitation, helping patients overcome not just physical limitations, but the mental barriers that often prevent healing. Healing together, Sarah and David have helped hundreds of people discover abilities they never knew they had. They have proven that sometimes the most powerful medicine isn't found in a prescription bottle or a surgical procedure. Sometimes the most powerful medicine is found in the simple act of one human being refusing to give up on another. Their story reminds us that we are all more capable than we realize. It reminds us that the limitations we accept as permanent might not be permanent at all. It reminds us that sometimes all it takes to change everything is one person who is willing to hold out their hand and say, "Trust me." Sarah never walked until David held out his hand. But once she took that hand, she discovered that she could do more than walk. She could run, she could dance, she could climb mountains, both literally and figuratively. She could inspire millions of people around the world to reconsider what they thought was possible in their own lives. This is more than a story about medical recovery. This is a story about human potential. This is a story about the power of belief. This is a story about what happens when love meets determination, when hope meets action, when impossible meets someone who refuses to accept that word. The next time someone holds out their hand to you, the next time someone invites you to try something that seems impossible, the next time someone believes in you more than you believe in yourself, remember Sarah and David. Remember that miracles are still happening every single day. Remember that your greatest breakthrough might be waiting on the other side of someone else's outstretched hand, because sometimes the most extraordinary journeys begin with the simplest gesture. Someone reaching out their hand and whispering those 5 magical words, "Trust me," and "Stand up." And it all started with one moment, one hand, and 5 words. Trust me and stand up. If Sarah's story touched your heart, do not let it stop. Hip. Subscribe so you never miss another story of hope like this video, so it can reach more people who need it, and share it because You never know whose life might change from the simple act of holding out a hand.